Well, again, good evening, everyone. I'm joined here by my colleague Felicity Smith, and we're going to be talking this evening about Easter in the English classroom. So, you've got a week or so, I think it is, just over a week until Easter. So, let's see if you can use some of these activities in your classes in the next week, or to be honest, any time of the year. Some of these are possible to do at other times of the year. What have you got planned for Easter, Felicity?
I'll actually be in Dulwich over Easter as we're running an Easter school there. So
Yes.
they're in the UK.
Yeah, so some of our students are already starting their trip abroad for Easter, and Felicity will be over there. Anyway, all the participants to our webinar this evening will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout in the next few days. I know we sometimes have some problems with emails bouncing, so if you don't receive it by Monday, first check your spam, but if you don't find it there, email me at formazione@mlaworld.com. The handout will contain a lot of information, all the information from the slides, and also a lot more, including links and some handouts that we've got for this webinar. Anyway, to begin, Easter and its associated traditions and foods gives English teachers an opportunity to use this common part of Italian or other nationalities, obviously, too, and English speaking culture in their English lessons. So, a lot of nations share this tradition, even though in certain parts of the world it may be a little earlier or a little bit later. By looking at the similarities that are shared between these countries, things like Easter eggs or the Christian origins, and the differences, that is, the local traditions, the typical dishes, we may introduce students gently into a tradition that is familiar but also slightly different. And this is the same sort of thing that goes for Christmas or some other holidays as well. So these sort of festivities allow us the opportunity to encourage students to use English to describe their own family traditions and habits. Again, these are sort of things that can change not only between countries, but in different regions or even in different families. And so rather than just repeating the normal weekly activities, they can have the chance to talk about activities or trips that happen less frequently, particularly, for example, Felicity saying that some of our students are going on trips this Easter. I'm sure a lot of your students, or maybe even the participants in our webinar, will be going on trips. We always have some objectives, so I hope by the end you'll be better able to incorporate traditions and themes of Easter into your English lessons. Prepare activities related to traditional food. Again, we've got some things on traditional British Easter food, but you can always incorporate this in your own way for local foods. And identify and explain some characteristics of a literary text. Let us know in the chat what your favorite Easter food is, whether it's the Easter eggs or it's something more local or specific to a particular country. Anyway, we've got a video here about some Easter vocabulary. So there's going to be this question, so look out for it. How many chocolate eggs are eaten in the UK in Easter? Make a guess in the chat, and then maybe after we can check it. We've included in the handout a quiz that you can photocopy and distribute to your students, so you can watch this in your classes. I think unfortunately, there's a little bit of a few ads at the beginning of this, so I hope you can just be patient while these play. Unfortunately, I can't skip them.
È sempre bello quando ci chiedono di cosa hai bisogno. A volte è concludere la giornata con una risata, ritrovarci per festeggiare, trascorrere più tempo con i nostri cari o con noi stessi. Qualunque cosa desideri, ordinala su Glovo. Scaricala e ricevi tutto ciò che vuoi in pochi minuti.
And one more, I think, I'm afraid.
Hi everyone, I'm Gina. After Christmas, the second biggest religious event of the year in the UK is Easter. Even for people who don't celebrate Easter as a religious observance, it is an important time of the year. The date changes every year, but it always coincides with the start of spring. In this lesson, you're going to learn about Easter and how it is celebrated. How many chocolate eggs are eaten in the UK at Easter? We'll show you the answer at the end of this video. At Easter, we give each other eggs. Eggs symbolize the resurrection and new life of Jesus Christ following his crucifixion. When this tradition started, it was bird eggs painted in bright colors that were given. Now, we give chocolate eggs to each other, and especially to children, that often have even more chocolate inside. A popular activity at Easter is to hold an Easter egg hunt. Small eggs are given in an area, usually a garden or public place, such as a school, and then people try to find them. The eggs can be real eggs that have been hard-boiled and painted, or small chocolate eggs. Schools will hold many events and competitions related to Easter, and one of the most famous is the Easter Bonnet Parade. For this, hats are decorated with Easter-related decorations, such as eggs, chicks, and rabbits. There are egg rolling competitions, where hard-boiled eggs are rolled down a slide or a hill, and the egg that travels the furthest without breaking apart wins. Also, there are egg decorating competitions. At Christmas, it is Santa Claus that brings the presents, but at Easter, it is the Easter Bunny that brings the eggs. Chocolate figures in the shape of bunnies are popular gifts at Easter, alongside the traditional eggs. And now I'll give you the answer to the earlier quiz. How many chocolate eggs are eaten in the UK at Easter? Around 80 million eggs are eaten by Brits at Easter. This is particularly impressive for a country that has a population of only 63 million people. How was this lesson? Did you learn something interesting? Do you have any games similar to the ones I spoke about in your country? Leave us a comment at EnglishClass101.com, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Bye!
Nice little video there with some interesting vocabulary and a lot of words that you could use, the definitions up there as well. As I said in the handout, there's a worksheet that you can use with your students with that video, and we've got the link there obviously too. Oh, sorry, one moment. With that, I think I'm going to hand over to Felicity, who's going to tell us about many people's favourite Easter food, and that is hot cross buns.
Yeah, so a hot cross bun is a spiced sweet bun, usually made with fruit, marked with a cross on the top, as you can see in the pictures here. It's been traditionally eaten on Good Friday in historically Commonwealth countries such as the United Kingdom, Ireland, Australia, India, New Zealand, South Africa, Canada, and some other parts of the Americas, including the United States. So the bun marks the end of the Christian season of Lent, and different parts of the hot cross bun have a certain meaning, including the cross representing the crucifixion of Jesus, the spices inside signifying the spices used to embalm him at his burial, and may also include orange peel to reflect the bitterness of this time on the cross. So we've got some odd facts here about hot cross buns. English folklore includes many superstitions surrounding hot cross buns. One of them says that buns marked and served on Good Friday will not spoil or grow moldy during the subsequent year. Another encourages keeping such a bun for medicinal purposes. A piece of it given to someone ill is said to help them recover. If taken on a sea voyage, hot cross buns are said to protect against shipwreck. If hung in the kitchen, they are said to protect against flies and ensure that all breads turn out perfectly. The hanging bun is then replaced every year. In 1592, during the reign of Elizabeth I of England, the London Clerk of Markets issued a decree forbidding the sale of hot cross buns and other spiced breads, except at burials, on Good Friday or at Christmas. The punishment for transgressing the decree was forfeiture of all the forbidden product to the poor. As a result of this decree, hot cross buns at the time were primarily made in domestic kitchens. Further attempts to suppress the sale of these items took place during the reign of James I of England. So that's between 1603 and 1625. So as you can see, the history of the hot cross bun goes back a very long time. One idea is to get your students then to research a typical food, perhaps a typical food in the community where they are, and then present weird and wonderful facts about the food as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, a lot of these, it doesn't necessarily need to be an Easter food, but you could use this any type of the time of the year and find out the traditions. A lot of these foods that we take for granted generally have like these sort of interesting stories behind them. I'm sure things like AI can help you with those particularly, or just going straight to Wikipedia or other pages there and get your students to do the research.
So when we're looking at hot cross buns, there's a traditional, what's now like a nursery rhyme, but was originally a street cry and later adapted into the nursery rhyme. We've got a little video link to it here. I don't know if you want to play it, Josh.
Sure.
Hot cross buns, hot cross buns. 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. If you have no daughters, give them to your sons. 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns.
So this is a nursery rhyme that I myself remember singing when I was really little.
Me too.
You too. A really famous one, especially around Easter time. But perhaps your students could come up with a rhyme to accompany a traditional Italian Easter food, and you could get them to play around with this in class. It's a nice idea.
Yeah, other nationalities too. If we've got participants from other nationalities too, I'm sure you can let us know in the chat. I'm not so familiar with other countries' traditional foods for Easter, but what do they eat? You live in Spain, Felicity. What
Yeah.
do they eat? Do they have any specialities where you are for Easter?
Yeah, so the special bun that we have over here in Spain actually has a hard-boiled egg on top. So it's kind of like a sweet bread with sugar and then a hard-boiled egg in the middle.
Nice. Sorry, just one moment.
So when looking at hot cross buns, another fun idea is to investigate the recipe as well. Can you predict any of the ingredients that we have in the hot cross bun? Again, you could write this in the chat. And then you could ask your students as well, do they know the meanings of the following verbs? We've got pour, add, sift, melt, beat, stir, knead, divide, place, cover, mix, and cut. So it's a good opportunity to make use of this kind of practical vocabulary in your classrooms as well. And then we've got the following abbreviations. Do you know what they mean? We've got ML or TSP, TBSP, and GR. Again, if you know the answers, you could write them in the chat. Here we've got a handout that kind of explains the recipe of the hot cross bun and goes through all of the different steps as well.
And again, this is just one recipe. I'm sure you can put your own touch on it there too. I think like many people have different versions of hot cross buns, some more delicious than others.
Yeah, for sure. So I can see some answers coming through in the chat already. But inside a hot cross bun, the main ingredients would be the minced spice. So you're looking at lots of dried fruit and sugar, nutmeg and cinnamon. And then, of course, the materials of the hot cross bun itself. So the butter, the eggs. And then, as we said before, mixing in some orange peel is a typical way of doing it as well. In terms of the abbreviations, ML, of course, is milliliters. We've also got a teaspoon, a tablespoon, and grams.
Yeah, these are sort of it's quite unusual that there's a lot of vocabulary that we only find in these recipes, these things like knead or stir or beat, and then the measurements too. So there's sort of things that you never really realize you need until you come across a recipe. But it can be an interesting way the students can read this recipe and then they can make a recipe of their own for a dish, maybe with the help of their parents.
Yeah, that's a really nice idea as well. So looking at ingredients, measurements and verbs is a great way to expand cooking and food vocabulary in your classrooms as well.
And always a sweet thing, I think, is always popular for kids to cook. Yeah.
They're also quite simple to make. So if you did have the opportunity to encourage the students to go home and give it a go.
Indeed. As we do on these sort of occasions, I've want to finish the webinar off with some literature, and we're going to be looking at the great Irish poet W.B. Yeats. Yeats was one of the greatest 20th century poets, arguably the greatest ever Irish poet. He developed from a late romantic poet interested in Irish mythology, from his 20s and 30s. And then as he got older, he went into a lot more modern styles, although he always had the romantic and mythology sort of base. Okay. Although he was part of the Protestant establishment in a predominantly Catholic Ireland, he was always a strong supporter of Irish independence. And in fact, in later years, he became an honorary senator of the Irish Free State, that is, after they became a republic. One of the great things about Yeats' poetry is how his life becomes the mythology he draws on. So it is quite important when you read Yeats to know a little bit about his life. There are poems where you don't need to know that, but he was at the centre of Irish politics, Irish Republican politics, and then also the literary movements of his time. So he draws on those, and not only artistic movements and things too. His friends became historical figures, and he was able to influence the thought of his time in a way that very few literary figures have done before or since. One of the key moments of the Irish independence movement is the inspiration for perhaps his greatest poem, that is Easter 1916. To tell you the story behind it is that on Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916, a group of Irish nationalists proclaimed the establishment of the Irish Republic, along with some 1,600 followers, and they staged a rebellion against the British government in Ireland. The rebels seized prominent buildings in Dublin and also parts of other parts of the country, but the most important part was in Dublin, and they clashed with British troops. Remember that this is before Irish had become independent, so it was ruled by the British Crown. Within a week, the insurrection had been suppressed and more than 2,000 people were dead or injured. The leaders of the rebellion soon were executed. Initially, there was little support from the Irish people for the Easter Rising. However, public opinion later shifted and the executed leaders were hailed as martyrs. In 1921, a treaty was signed that in 1922 established this Irish Free State, which eventually became the modern-day Republic of Ireland. So this revolution didn't lead directly to the Republic, but it was later seen as one of the key things that sort of turned public opinion in support of the Republic. Yeats had long been an advocate of Irish independence, but had not supported violence, and he knew a lot of those involved in the uprising personally. In fact, one had been married to his muse, that is the woman that he was in love with for most of his life, that is Maud Gonne. One of the greatest political poems of all time, Easter 1916, still manages to evoke this martyrdom and rebirth, traditional themes of Easter. So although it's obviously based on this thing that happened at Easter, it still has these sort of themes that rebirth, martyrdom, that sort of tie it in with the sort of Christian origins as well. Although Yeats was not particularly a, let's say, traditional Christian, if a Christian at all. Anyway, we have the poem here, and I've got a reading of it. And so let's listen to it. It goes on for a little bit, but it's a very nice reading here, so I hope you enjoy it.
Easter 1916 by W.B. Yeats. I have met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces from counter or desk among grey 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head, or polite meaningless words, or have lingered a while and said polite meaningless words. and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a jibe to please a companion, around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but lived where motley is worn, all changed, changed utterly, a terrible beauty is born. That woman's days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew shrill. What voice more sweet than hers, when young and beautiful she rode to harriers? This man kept a school and rode our winged horse. This other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so daring and sweet his thought. This other man I had dreamed, a drunken, vainglorious lout. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near to my heart. Yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part. In the casual comedy, he too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, through summer and winter seem enchanted to a stone to trouble the living stream. The horse that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from cloud to tumbling cloud, minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plashes within it. The long-legged moorhens dive, and hens to moorcocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stones in the midst of all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name, as a mother names her child when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, no, not night, but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said. We know their dream enough to know they dreamed and are dead. But what if excess of love bewildered them till they died? I rout it out in a verse, Macdonagh and Macbride, and Connolly and Pearse, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed, changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born.
So in this poem, Yeats starts by reflecting on the occasions he has met these people and said polite, meaningless words. Suddenly there's been a change, and these men have left what he refers to as the casual comedy to become these tragic figures. In the second stanza, he's referring to previous impressions he has of these people, some of them positive and some of them negative. Even John Macbride, a man who allegedly beat his wife, who was Yeats's great love, Maud Gonne, is now seen in this tragic light. So he's giving this idea that people, that people change when they become these sort of martyrs into something a bit more significant, whether they were good people or bad people. The poem really hits its stride in the third stanza with this sort of philosophical, mythical contemplation of how a stone, which in my reading anyway is related to this sort of fanaticism, it troubles the living and the active elements of the landscape. And then in the last stanza, he shows his ambivalence. So again, he was for the independence of Ireland, certainly strongly for that, but he always had an ambivalence to violence. And so he's also questioning whether England will keep its promise to give Ireland more freedom after the Great War was won. Like most great poems, Easter 1916 doesn't come down on one side of the argument or the other. The motley, as he refers to in the beginning, that is the coloured clothing of a court full, has become green. That is the traditional colour of Irish independence, and the terrible beauty of their sacrifice remains. Their names must be uttered in the poem, even though Yeats seemed to avoid them earlier, referring them to them as this man or this woman. It has this poem has been echoed in many subsequent poems of varying success. One of the greatest poems to take up the ambivalent, wearied tone of Yeats's is W. H. Auden's September the 1st, 1939. Again, using a sort of date there is the clues in the title of the poem, in which the English poet reflects on the outbreak of war in Europe. So this is the Second World War from his new home in New York. Auden had recently written a praised poem about Yeats's death that is in memory of W.B. Yeats. So Yeats' poem would have been much in Auden's mind when he wished to mark a significant date in history. Not only the title and tone, but even the stanzaic form, that is the form of the verses, ultimately derives from Yeats's poem. Seamus Heaney, so arguably the greatest poet from Ireland since Yeats, often evokes Easter 1916 in his great poems of the Irish Troubles, such as Casualty. In this poem, Heaney recounts his friendship with an alcoholic fisherman who was killed by an IRA bomb. This sort of blend of public events and personal recollection and the sort of martyrdom of this person, this innocent person, sort of finds its origins in Yeats's elegy for the dead of the Easter Rising. So as you can see, sort of there's this connection from this great work of political poetry into more recent poets. Anyway, not only young students, but older ones will also find a lot of lessons on Easter and other festivities. Why not ask them to speak or write about what Easter means to me or how my family celebrates Easter? And again, this can be great for other occasions throughout the year as well. So you could use, for example, Christmas, New Year's Eve, or even local festivities, things that local things for the city, for your town, or in other countries as well. Some questions about traditions, festivities, past and future holidays are a common topic for Cambridge speaking exams. So if you're interested in getting your students to do these exams, it's a really good opportunity. And MLA will be launching very soon our exams in our centres, our summer centres. So look out for that if you're travelling with MLA this summer, or if your students are or your children are. Any lesson which gives students vocabulary for Easter will help them increase their chances of passing the exam, because they're often these sort of things that are common ground that the examiners can use. Anyway, we have a few ideas lined up for the rest of the school year for our webinars, but we're still very interested in your own ideas. So drop them in the chat, or you're welcome, after you finish this webinar, there will be a page for a survey. You're welcome to put them in there. And I always read that and get ideas from there about our future webinars. Anyway, thank you, Felicity, for helping me with the webinar today. And a big thank you to all the participants. You will receive your certificate of participation by email. I think tomorrow we'll send it out, but you don't need to write to us unless you don't receive it in the next few days. But if you do, there's the email there. And you get, as I said at the beginning, you get a handout containing those worksheets, the links, and the poem as well. Again, that will be in the same email with the certificate. We're taking a pause next week for Easter, since it's Holy Thursday next Thursday. So we're going to join you again, or I hope you join us again, in 2 weeks. That is Thursday, the 9th of April. We'll have a special webinar, which we'll announce soon then, with a special guest. That webinar will be held in Italian. So I hope you join us for that. If you're not Italian speaking, then I'll see you in 3 weeks. Okay. Anyway, thanks again to Felicity, and we wish all our participants a safe and enjoyable Easter.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye, everyone.